The strike came just days after nuclear talks between Iran and the United States under the new Trump administration collapsed. Within hours, Israeli fighter jets attacked over 100 strategic sites across Iran, dealing devastating blows to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and its nuclear program. Iran's retaliation was swift. A barrage of drones and ballistic missiles hit Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv. Dozens of civilians in Israel and hundreds more in Iran have died in the crossfire. Now, to understand how we got here, we must look back. Once allies until Iran's 1979 revolution, Israel and Iran became bitter enemies. The decades since have seen Iran pursue nuclear capabilities while backing militant groups across the region. The 2015 nuclear deal briefly paused the effort, but it reignited fears of nuclear breakout after Israel's campaign against Hamas and Hezbollah in 2024, combined with regime change in Syria. Iran's strategic position weakened. Israeli leaders saw a rare opportunity to strike now or risk a nuclear-armed Iran later. Today, we examine the history, strategy, and global stakes of a conflict with no clear end in sight. Now, I'll be joined by academic and public affairs analyst Bello Daudum Bada and international law expert Livingstone Wechi. For this conversation, we understand we have both of them. Good to have you join us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy also having meeting you.
Right, so let me begin with you, Mr. Bada. Now we're seeing a crisis in the Middle East. First, there is an Israel-Hamas war, and then there is the Israel-Iran war. Well, people still call it a conflict, but could escalate. I want to get your thought on this current crisis, which is the Iran-Israel conflict.
Well, you see, in 1945, when George Orwell published his satirical, allegorical novel, Animal Farm, we all thought it was a fiction. Only in the modern world now, to be forced to realize that we have two worlds. The world of the superpowers and America, and the other world of all of us. You cannot imagine in the modern world when negotiations concerning nuclear of Iran was going on, and the Sunday again was scheduled for another meeting. Only 2 or 3 days before the time for Israel to invade Iran, kill its scientists, destroyed so many places in Iran, yet the other parts of the world, the super world, is keeping quiet. We thought even if there is anything in this world, we have something we call universality. Humanity, we believe as human beings, we are not animals, we respect others because of their own humanity. Then we believe we have values that are really universal, what is good and what is right. But now we realize even what is good is subjective, what is right is subjective depending on who you are. Could you imagine any country in the Middle East that could just wake up and attack Israel, even killing scientists and higher military officers? And you think that in the next 24 hours, the world will not pounce on that country? There is no country like that. So this is really what it is. It's very unfortunate. If we are forced to view the world in terms of who we are economically, in terms of who we are in terms of militarily, then it's unfortunate for the world. And we hope this should not be a lesson for those who are coming in the future. They should be made to see justice applicable to all, no matter who is affected. The world, the United Nations, is now made toothless. You can't believe this. So many other things passed by the United Nations are not respected by Israel. Whether Israel or Iran, any country that does not respect the United Nations resolutions and the others, then what do you expect the world to be? So you have to join, you surrender, you submit yourself to the dictations of America, then this is the only way you can survive. A country threatening again the head of state of another country. that we will kill you in the modern world. Then where is civilization? Where is education? Where are the rest countries of the world? That even when Europe could still meet with the foreign secretary of Iran, America is saying, you are making a mistake. There is nothing anybody in this world can do for you. Come to America, beg us, accept our conditions. And this is the most unfortunate in the modern world of today, when we believe the world is being coined into one, humanity is respected. We believe no matter who you are, if you have something to contribute to peace. When the current president of America came on board, even when he was campaigning to be elected, he was blaming his predecessor for allowing war between Russia and Ukraine and other parts of the world. He was promising peace to the world, only for us to find ourselves now. They have forgotten about Ukraine entirely. They have forgotten about Gaza.
Mr. Bada, let me put you on hold just a minute. I want to bring in Livingstone into the conversation. Livingstone, I know that you've listened to Mr. Bada speaking. On the side of Iran, they say, look, this is unprovoked. I mean, they were just at the heart of a negotiation, nuclear negotiation with the U.S. The talks were on. And then for Israel, this is really about deterrence. And so I want to get your thoughts about the justification of this conflict.
Well, just as my elder on the other side has tried to go historical, there is a long history between Israel and Iran. If you go further down, between 1925 and 1979, there is a record that there was no form of hostility between these two states. As a matter of fact, when Israel was declared an independent state, Iran was said to be the second nation, Islamic nation, to endorse the status of Israel after Turkey. So up until 1979, when the Iranian Revolution took place, there was love between both until love was lost, as at 1979, when a regime came on board which began to see an enemy in Israel. So in between, of course, there is the struggle by Israel at all costs to survive as the only Jewish state on earth, much as it is boundaried by some neighbors whom it sees as enemies. So Israel is always on the lookout because for any reason, should Israel become vulnerable or become a target of destruction or annihilation, as some have sought to carry out against her, Israel will go into extinction. And I want to state clearly that this is not a Christian-Muslim war, so that people do not begin to take it out of context. Israel per se is not strictly a Christian state, it's a Jewish state. And it is a war of might, is a war of superiority contest between contending supernations and their proxies. Because what has happened recently is traced largely to Israel's belief that Iran is strongly behind the sponsorship of Hezbollah and Hamas, which has placed Israel under serious attacks and categorized as terrorist organizations by Europe and America. But at this point, where Iran sees Israel as attacking its nuclear interests, and Israel sees Iran as attacking its own cyber interest and all other political interests, Iran is seen as a major nation that has put Israel under existential threat. So, but the point to go is where we begin to notice a serious global leadership failure in all of these conflicts, particularly in view of the fact that there are core mandates that led to the setting up of the United Nations. And it does appear to me that from 1948, if I'm not mistaken, or 45, the year in which the UN was established after the League of Nations up until now, where it was aimed at containing global wars and stopping the furtherance of any other world war, we have seen much more wars between the setting up of the UN and up until now at the regional levels that even transcend beyond the scope and the dimensions of the World Wars I and II that took place. Humans have died under violent conflict between the dates the UN was set up until now. And so it begins to raise the concerns whether the UN has indeed succeeded in its core mandate. In my view, the UN has not succeeded. I wouldn't say they have failed. I would rather say that they have not succeeded in their core mandates in preserving global...
I will get to the response of global leaders in just a moment, but I want to stay with you before I go back to Mr. Bada. He was talking about the U.S., that's Mr. Bada, you know, how Trump had come into office saying he was going to stop the wars. In fact, he said he was going to stop the Russia-Ukraine war, you know, just almost immediately he took office. But now, in this, his approach to this particular war, he first said Israel, you know, attacked Iran without their knowledge. But now he uses the word we. Is that really a shift in approach, or do you see that this was a premeditated attack between, you know, which more like a collaboration between Israel and the U.S.?
Well, if Trump has said that Israel attacked Iran without their consent or without their knowledge, it shows that it was not a collaboration. And mind you, Israel is an unrepentant ally of the U.S., just as Iran has its own allies. So we have allied nations, countries that have different levels of relationship. You won't rule that out in international diplomacy. That is playing out. But again, I think what Trump is doing is to also create the apprehension against any possible attack from Iran. Every nation at this time will be showing strength, because much as they relate at the level of international relationship or relations, they also know their vulnerabilities. What Trump is doing is to put America on top of the game to ensure that America is not taken unawares, either by an attack from Iran, which may not have the level of reservation or, as it were, which may not have the level of restraint that may be required in managing its responses to such attacks. So what Trump is doing must also be restricted to what he has said. So this war does not escalate into a foreseeable, unmanageable conflict, as some may put it, a third world war, because you have items such as chemical and nuclear weapons on the table here. And I did mention the United Nations, but at this point, if a country that cannot exercise restraint begins to evince that character of careless deployment of weapons such as chemical or nuclear weapons, then there will be no world to govern or dominate, as some of them seek to do. So the position of Trump is in furtherance to America's historic relationship with Israel, which is common knowledge. And I don't directly see anything wrong with that, to the extent that America ensures that it dispenses fairness in its response, and not to portray itself as a threat to Iran's sovereignty.
All right, Mr. Bada, let's talk about where Livingstone left off. They talked about America, you know, displaying fairness in how it handles especially issues in the Middle East. But how fair would you say America has been? Because this is really about one thing, Iran's nuclear program. Iran says it is developing this program for its own, it is a peaceful program. It's for its own use within its own country. Israel, we understand, has nuclear weapons as well, but has never openly admitted that it has. And so in all of this, how fair would you say, not just the U.S., but generally just in geopolitics has been to Iran?
You see, the big question is the word fairness. Somebody said Trump said he was not aware. But if you look at his body language, you look at his utterances, and so on and so forth, you cannot expect him to really be fair. Nobody will question your alliance with Israel or any other country you have chosen in the world. Nobody will question that. But when it comes to world peace, you should be seen to be fair, to do your best. You should be seen to support the United Nations. Just like my brother has said, he said he cannot say United Nations has failed, but he could say it has not succeeded. It has failed. That is the trouble. It has failed because America does not want the United Nations to succeed. In a situation where America is behaving in such a way as if it is the only strong nation in the world, and it wants to demonstrate its own strength, that it dominates the world, and will close its eyes to anything that is justice. This is where the problem is. You cannot allow a country to go and attack a nuclear program of Iran when you knew already. You put a date when you are going to meet on Sunday, and before then, they suddenly attacked these people. They killed their military commanders. They destroyed so many sections of that. No, in terms of fairness, in terms of peace in the world, in terms of justice, no matter who is offended, I think the most important is this world where we find ourselves, no matter who we really are. This is the issue. But the problem with Trump is whether you are in Europe, whether you are in Africa or anywhere in the world, he dictates and he wants you to obey as if he is a military commander, militarizing the entire world. And this is where the problem is, and that is what is escalating. Now take, for example, what is happening in Gaza. Take, for example. This cannot happen anywhere in the world. You can imagine if it is happening in your own country, or what is happening in Gaza if it is happening in any other European country. You can just imagine this. Imagine what is happening in Ukraine. You can imagine this. And he seems to ignore Russia with what is happening in Ukraine because he doesn't want to offend Vladimir Putin. So if the world, if the very people who are expected, you see, to steer the ship of the world to peace, if this is how they will show the might, then we are in trouble in this world, in the modern world. This is a modern world, a world where we try to relate, especially under United Nations. When we have disputes, when we have conflicts, when there are wars, we expect we have United Nations, and the people should be obedient. But if you look at it, Trump is not obedient to the United Nations, and therefore does not encourage Israel to also be obedient to the resolutions of the United Nations. So where do we go from here? The whole world will catch fire from one country to the other. Today it is Russia and Ukraine. Then you find again Gaza and Palestine and Israel. Then now it is Israel and Iran. Then next time it will be Iran and America. Iran on its own would never attack America on its own. Never, because they knew the consequences. So they will not do that. But America is showing might. Nobody will go and attack Israel. Because they knew by attacking Israel, you are attacking America. By attacking Israel, you are attacking other European countries. So nobody will go and attack Israel. I think they provoked Iran so many times.
Is that really a factual statement when you see how Iran's proxies, which is believed that Iran funds, I think Livingston also mentioned them earlier, Hezbollah, Hamas, there's the Houthi rebels as well, and how they have attacked Israel over time. The October attack is still there, where Hamas, invaded Israel. Isn't it a cause of concern for Israel to say, hold on, Mr. Bada? Is it a cause of concern for Israel to say, look, if you can use proxies to attack us, when you then have a nuclear weapon, what then will happen? Mr. Bada, go ahead, please. I want to be sure that we still have Mr. Bada. Mr. Bada, if you can hear me, the question was to you that is Israel's concerns, or are Israel's concerns not justified? Right, Livingstone, before we get back to Mr. Bada, probably his network went off. I wanted to also ask you, in terms of the nuclear weapons that Iran said it is developing, Israel is also believed to have one. Why is it that there is a club for those who have nuclear weapons, but new members can't join in, except the U.S. approves and sees you as an ally?
Well, first of all, let me take a bite from the question you were trying to ask Mr. Bala, that ordinarily when you have an existential threat and there are indicators to bring you into that realm, the policy or principle of self-defense allows you to take proactive and preemptive actions to preserve yourself. So what Israel is doing is not to shy away from the fact that Iran has never denied its support for Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations, as America and Europe has christened them. But on the issue that you have just raised, can you please raise it back, because I missed a line when you were asking the question.
The question is, if you have a club of people who have nuclear weapons, because there is a nuclear proliferation treaty that is being signed by a lot of countries, but you don't have Russia and US signing that treaty, which a lot of people will say, look, that's hypocrisy. But then you have a nuclear club. India was able to develop its nuclear weapon. Pakistan did without US raising eyebrows. But how come Iran cannot join that club?
Well, these are part of the failures in the framework that brought about the setting up of the United Nations. When you have a club of Security Council members which are exclusive for certain states, whereas the United Nations principled framework is that all nations are equal as long as they are sovereign states, they'll be treated equally. But within its organogram and its structural framework, you find the discriminations taking place where other nations are made to function at the behest of supranations. So these are inequalities that Africa has continued to advocate. I remember the late Zimbabwean president, Robert Mugabe, when he questioned the rationale why Africa must not have a slot at the Security Council. It poses global threats where some people are allowed to have superior weapons far and above the others and believe that they are the only ones with the exclusive restraint to manage such weapons. You will, of course, raise eyebrows as to the equality or the question of sovereignty, whether it is indeed being respected. So it is the type of world we have found ourselves in, and that's why on the one hand, you have the promotion of global peace with the promise that there will be equal treatment in terms of global affairs with respect to independent states. But in actual practice, these states are made to serve or function at the mercy of the superior state. As such, when there is crisis, they are at the dictates of the supranations. And these inequalities, as long as they continue to have their way, you will continue to have this type of instabilities around the world. Because take, for instance, what is playing out now between Israel and Iran, where there is a contention, disputes, age-long disputes, over who should possess what type of weaponry. And one state has stood out, America, to stand with Israel along with Europe. Iran, along with its own allies, is standing still on that same United Nations table to contend with the same question that United Nations, upon its setup, has said, no, these factors must not be in the table. They have brought in groups, bodies like the International Atomic Agencies to regulate. The question now is, why can the world not at this stage outlaw the production of nuclear weapons by states? Why should states in the first instance possess such weapons if the agenda of the UN is indeed to achieve peace? The answer is that in the game of international politics, there can never be equalities. Some will always take the place of superiority over others. And the point is, if this continues where there is a quest for dominance by individual states, and then there is the deployment of these weapons like the nuclear or biological or chemical weapons, and the world is destroyed, where will there be a world to dominate if we explode or deploy these weapons to destroy the same world that we seek to preserve? So there are questions. What you see going on from the Iran's agitation among others who are genuinely agitating for equality in global treatment, it's still that same issue. It's still that same issue of the fact that we must be treated equally. Otherwise, we should disperse. If we cannot negotiate the terms and the context of our relationship, then we should disperse. And dispersal will amount to a global, unprecedented conflict. There is no other way to look at it, particularly when it comes to Africa. Where does Africa stand in all of this? What is the guarantee for Africa's protection, Africa's security? Because the spiral effect of this particular conflict, as it continues to spread, will be a migration of dissident and terrorist groups into Africa through the Sahel, particularly the Western and Northern Africa, which is more vulnerable, and entry routes to these crisis areas. And when that happens, a country like Nigeria, which is grappling with Boko Haram and banditry and all other forms of headers, terrorist engagements, will be overwhelmed. Currently, Nigeria is already overwhelmed. Truth be told, Nigeria is overwhelmed by terrorism and insurgency, which is a very thriving industry in the hands of their sponsors, known sponsors. But the point to note is that if that happens, Nigeria's economy will be further jeopardized. If that happens, the internal terrorists and dissident elements will be emboldened to be, as they are, some of them are inspired by these groups in some of these other.
I mean, we already see that the consequences of the Libya crisis and how it's affecting the sub-Saharan countries in terms of having to deal with a large scale of security challenges just because of the Libya crisis. But I also wanted to ask you, still on that non-proliferation treaty, Iran is now threatening to pull out, and what the implication of that would be.
No, Iran can pull out, but it will still be under check. It is not a question of pulling out, or no country can exist in isolation. Iran pulls out, what it will further do is to make that relationship or the Committee of Nations further unmanageable, as it were. You begin to have groups or states who are beginning to do things that are unruly, that may further threaten global peace. And that's why you use the word treaty. We have all understood and have agreed to subscribe and to be bound by these agreements. And by so doing, there are rules as to how we apply the elements and infrastructure that have brought us together. Weapons, arms, and all sorts of things. So if Iran pulls out, yes, much as it will not be bound directly, but indirectly, it will be bound because it will be placed under watch. But again, let me say this. You know, wars are business opportunities for crisis matchup.
Allow me put you on hold, Mr. Livingstone-Whitchie, as we take a break now. And then when we return, the conversation will continue. Stay with us, everyone. Looking at the escalation, recent escalation in the tension between Iran and Israel. The latest attack started off with Israel, and then Iran retaliated. At this point, the world is looking for a diplomatic solution, but not seem to be in sight yet. Will it escalate and become a world war? Is the concern that everyone shares. I've been speaking with an academic, Daoud Mbada. He has not rejoined the conversation. And also we have an international law expert, Livingstone-Whitchie. Thank you, gentlemen, for staying with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Mbada, I want to get the conversation to you now. The question I was asking you before we lost connection with you was, Israel's concerns not justified when you see how the number of attacks it has endured, or suffered rather, from Iran's proxies in that region, which is, countries in Europe and US have designated terrorist groups?
You see, the world has rules and the regulations through United Nations. When you are offended, you don't take action by yourself. There are other channels, procedures which you can follow, and you get the settlement. But you just don't take unilateral action, you alone. You do what you want to do. If everybody in the world will do what he wants to do because he is strong, if you are offended by others and you believe There were so many people who were pushing them. Then you have channels. Follow the channels. Respect the United Nations. When you follow the channels, you get the solutions. But if you can just wake up, because you know you have America behind you, you wake up, you do what you want to do, just because you are thinking that evidently you attack, America will come in. But I think that is wrong in a more civilized world of today. That's not civilization. You see, this is the problem. If you think you are offended, think of the channels that you can come to solution.
Let's not forget that one of the channels you mentioned, which is United Nations, the relationship between the UN and Israel went sour recently over attacks in Gaza. And so that might not be a channel that Israel will want to explore.
So because it has refused to obey all the pleadings of different parts of the world concerning Gaza, where you bring your food, you invite people to come for the food, then they get killed. People tell you this is not civilization. This is not humanity. So because you don't want to follow those channels, you wake up, you go to war, and you think the world are blessed. No, this is not civilization. This is not education. This is not where we are expected from developed countries. And this is all because you have America behind you. This is the problem. This is the real danger. And if the world should move like this, then everybody will do his best to make sure that he protects his own country. And this is what we don't want. We want a situation where we respect humanity. We respect international laws. We respect values, universal values, which we all have, no matter who we are. This is the problem. If you look at what is happening in Gaza, you look at the people in Gaza. What is their offense? They are starved of food. They are asked to come for food. They die in the course of getting the food. United Nations is crying. Nobody is respecting United Nations. But it is now Israel wants people to believe that what it did was right. It stopped the negotiation on Sunday. It stopped sympathy for the people in Gaza. Then it took its own decision, because America is always there for Israel. Whether Israel is right or Israel is wrong, America is always there. And America has the strongest economy in the world. They have the strongest military in the world. And therefore, they will use that against weak people in the world. This is not the kind of civilized world we are expecting. This is not what we expect education to really bring to us. We are not we have not expected United Nations to be reduced into a toothless bull.
I'm staying with you, Mr. Bada. There is now talks for an opportunity for negotiation. There was a meeting between the foreign ministers of the UK, Germany, and Iran. I think there's one more country, France, yesterday in Geneva. And it didn't go as planned. Iran is insisting, Abbas Arakchi, who is the foreign minister for Iran, is insisting that until Israel stops the attacks, they are not going to begin negotiations. But is it not in Iran's best interest at this moment to negotiate?
If you listen to BBC World Service today, Trump said no European country can do anything. Best thing is you surrender, you come to America. Talking to UK, talking to Germany, to France, you are wasting your time. Nobody can change us. Come to America, beg us, accept our conditions, surrender. That's what you said if you listen to BBC World Service today. So, what do you expect there? They know Iran is a weak country. They know Iran is alone. They know they can finish everybody in Iran. They destroy Iran. They know what they did to Iraq. They know they can do that to Iran. They know what they did in Syria. They know they can do that to Iran, and that's all. But
is Iran really a weak country, Mr. Bada? Iran is one of the superpowers, in quotes, in the Middle East. It has allies in Russia, China, and North Korea. So is it really a weak country and alone?
Russia is busy with its own war with Ukraine. It is very busy. They are only lucky that Trump is sympathetic to Putin, and that's all. But they are busy. They have already been weakened. And this is the situation. And this is what America is exploiting. And this is what Israel is sincerely exploiting. They know the other European countries are toothless. There is nothing they can do without America. They rely heavily on America, and that's what they are doing. You cannot call Iran a superpower. No, they are alone. Can't you see Jordan? Is Jordan the same religion with Israel? No, they are not the same religion. But they are very good friends.
I said, let me take the conversation to Livingstone. I actually mentioned in the Middle East, they are well respected as well in the Middle East. But I wanted to, let me go to Livingstone. Livingstone, when you look at this war, compared to the Iran-Hamas war, we've seen some, it's been a deafening silence in the Middle East. The Arab nation seems to be quiet on this. Why do you think that is?
Well, there are alliances amongst them. I don't think they're actually quiet. The fact that they have not rolled out their tanks, I don't think that amounts to quietness, as it were. What I think is the alliances and treaties that hold them may be restraining them. I think that's why they are deploying the diplomatic measures to see to the resolution of this conflict. Iran cannot be categorized as a weak country. If it were a weak country, it would not be a threat to Israel. So for Israel to categorize Iran as a threat to its own existence in terms of its activities within the realms of nuclear energy, that is to say that Iran is not a weak country. I think what has happened is the Middle East countries, some of which are also American allies, are also considering their relationship with the US, like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, and so on. They have very strong ties with the US. US has a very strong weapons relationship with Saudi Arabia, and in turn, America has a very strong tie with Israel that is like a lifetime relationship. So those factors are on the table, determining the way they are responding to this particular conflict. Interestingly, as I tried mentioning earlier on, wars have become a large industry in global affairs, where during war era, weapons are sold, and it's one of the highest revenue earners in the deployment of a global economy and secret service engagements. We have seen it time and time again. Incidentally, as the elder there rightly mentioned, where a country or some countries, particularly those before 1967 January 1, who were allowed to maintain nuclear powers, were allowed to maintain same to the exclusion of others and acting as world's police over other nations. This is that same question that has made India not to subscribe or sign up to the non-proliferation treaty in their own terms, because they believe it is unjust and it is unfair that nations such as America, Russia, China, and so on will hold on to these weapons, whereas others are excluded. Why are they holding onto these weapons? Is their bargaining chip to keep the world under their control. So you will continue to see these disputations, reactions from countries like Iran and other nations that are becoming both revolutionary and activistic, to ask questions on the potentiality of exclusive states having powers to exercise nuclear energy, whereas others are restricted and prohibited. So where do we come in at this point? Can we bring this conversation home? We will bring it home, but I wanted to ask you quickly about, before we bring it home, it's still staying in the Middle East. Is there also a sense that perhaps, because there is no love lost between Iran and some of those Arab nations as well, is there a sense that, well, they silently in support? Because again, Iran is also a threat to some of those countries. It's breaking. I couldn't get you. It's breaking. Can you hear me clearly now? Okay, it's somewhat better. Okay. All right. So I was saying that, is there a sense that some of these Arab nations are also silently, whilst they are hoping for
this to be done quickly and this to be, come to an end quickly and negotiations happen. But it's also a sense that they sort of silently support Israel because Iran is also a threat to some of these countries.
If Elder heard that question, he may please intervene because it's just been breaking from your end. I can't hear it clearly.
Okay, so let me take you to Mr. Badar. Mr. Badar, let me also get to your thoughts on the reactions from Arab nations.
I'm suffering from the same problem. It is breaking. I really cannot hear you properly. I cannot.
Mr. Badar, can you hear me now?
It's breaking.
All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to take a break and then try and establish connection with both guests and then continue the conversation. Stay with us, everyone.
Every second, every minute, every hour, and every day, time doesn't just tick away. It's a countdown to political decisions that shape our world.
This country must move.
Imagine the impact these decisions have on our lives. Some are consequential, others may leave us intrigued or baffled.
You will have no better friend and partner than Nigeria.
Step in and feel the frenzy like never before. Join me every weekday for an hour of fact-finding interviews where questions cut to the core.
How would you say your administration has fared in these sectors?
I will dig in to get to the heart of issues, from local politics to global insight. Join me as I unearth the power plays, jaw-dropping revelations, and the unfiltered truth. This isn't just politics, it's unraveling the stories that matter. Brace yourself for Politics Tonight every weekday at 8 p.m, where every decision echoes along the corridors of our lives. Politics Tonight, only on TVC News.
I'm Miriam Lunge. I'm a passionate environment advocate and a published author.
I am the founder of Celebration, a businesswoman, and a fashion icon. I am a wealth coach and a real estate developer.
All right, thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching Standpoint. We're looking at the Iran-Israel conflict. I've been speaking with an academic, Bello Daudun Badar, and also an international law expert, Livingstone Uchechi. Thank you both for staying with us.
Thank you.
So, because of time, I was asking you earlier, about the reaction of the Middle East nations, but I want to bring it back home because of time. We're almost out of time. Livingstone, I want to ask you what you make of Nigerians' response. Our response, and I just wanted to, what we did was to condemn Israel's preemptive military strike on Iran, and we described it as an escalation, a dangerous escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. We will usually maintain our principle of neutrality, but we've gone, broken out of that tradition. What do you make of it?
I don't think Nigeria should break out of that tradition, because if you break out of that tradition when you don't have the capacity to assert it, it will put you under diplomatic jeopardy. So at this point, what I think Nigeria should be doing is to maintain the lane of mediation, to sue for peace and a truce. The reason is that if this situation degenerates further, Nigeria will be at the receiving end. We don't need to be an unregenerate, we don't need to dispense ourselves in an unregenerate manner and become so insensitive, knowing that we are grappling with a similar situation back at home, which we have not been able to assertively address, and resulting in the loss of countless lives in our country, unfortunately, on a daily basis. So it is my view that Nigeria should now, while it is suing for peace between the warring states, also look at the need to improve on its own internal security, because the spiral effect of this conflict will mean that It will endanger our economy. It will heighten the security situation by local outlaws and becoming emboldened as a result of their emotional attachment to some of these states at war and see it as a religious war. It will also give room for displacement of more people that will influx into Nigeria on account of the migration resulting from this war. So what is Nigeria's preparedness in the event where this type of conflict degenerates? What is our level of preparedness? These are things we should be asking ourselves. What is our level of preparedness? Because the war between Israel and its neighbors, the war between them do not look like there is an end in sight, if we want to be very, very factual about the situation. It has moved from Hamas into Palestine, now Iran. Who knows what other groups will come into the picture? So it is important that Nigeria begins to work out containment measures within its limited capacities to ensure that in the event where this war, because yes, oil prices will be affected. There may be an oil boom. More money will come into the country because in some parts of the oil-producing states, oil is no longer coming out. So Nigeria now have opportunity for wider sales. But there will be
Livingston, I have a few minutes left. I think I have about 3 minutes more. And I want to bring in Mr. Bada quickly into the conversation before we wrap. Mr. Bada, I also want to get your reaction to Nigeria's response, and do we risk diplomatic consequences, especially from the U.S.?
I think Nigeria tried to respond in such a way it sees itself as a leading country in Africa. But the most important question, as asked by Livingston, is, has Nigeria the capacity to assert what actually it did? I do agree with him quite all right, that we should look inwards what is going to happen between if it escalates, especially what is the relationship of the people in Nigeria with Iran, the relationship with people in Nigeria, with Israel, with America and Europe. It is so important to us. And what happens again to our own fragile peace in Nigeria? We are already in war, whether locally or nationally. What is going to happen to that? This is the most important. For every diplomatic issue, Nigeria has to be very, very careful, very cautious. Look at where we are, look at where we are in the world, on the world map, and our local problems before we take a decision, so that we don't hang ourselves.
And Livingstone, quickly, the impact that this could have on the African continent, and how should Africa be positioning itself right now in case this escalates further?
No, one of the ways is that Africa has to really work out measures to deepen democracy. The problem of lack of internal democracy within the framework of African governance system has given room for a lot of infiltration. It will endanger too many states if this war escalates. It will endanger too many states where hawks and hijackers are on the prowl to take over government, even if many of these states that call themselves democratic states are not democratic, because in the eyes of the African Union, what constitutes a democratic state is when the head of state puts on a civilian clothes, whereas there is no difference in terms of character between the so-called democratic government and that of the juntas in Africa. So we must become very intentional and begin to convene. There is the need to convene summits of African leaders and stakeholders, not just the leaders, but intellectual stakeholders, so we can work out collective modalities on how to survive inwards, how we can survive in the event of the escalation, because any country in Africa that comes under attack or becomes vulnerable to this particular global conflict, it will affect the rest of Africa. You can't rule that out. But unfortunately, the African Union that should be regulating and superintending over this type of move is neither here nor there. And it's a big problem for Africa.
Thank you, gentlemen. This is where we leave it. Academic Mr. Bello Daudubada, thank you so much for your time. And we also had international law expert Livingstone Weche. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.